that history is involved. At the time that the prophet had the vision, that it is applicable to that time and all throughout time until the end. The preterist says that it only applies in the future. The past, and the futurist says that it only applies to the future. We believe that it applies from the time of the prophet and on. So they also took the approach that prophecy, this is what I just explained, was a sequence of historical fulfillments beginning at the time of the biblical prophet, but extending through history to the end of time. So, a brief summary. They came to the realization, as we looked at Daniel 8:14, and we'll see later in the book of Leviticus and the book of Hebrews chapter 9, that the sanctuary that was to be cleansed was not the earth, and that the cleansing was not the second advent. These are the things that they said Miller was wrong, and this is where he was wrong. And so, what then happened? Well, there was various people involved in answering that question, and they were all scattered throughout the country, well, the Northeast. They weren't like all together. This is a picture of Hiram Edson, who was the one who had, after a season of prayer on October 23rd, he recognized that Jesus, and this is all scripturally based, had gone from the one compartment to the second compartment to begin the work of atonement in the most holy place. And that's what we talked about last time. We can't get into depth, but these are some of the characters. R.L. Crozier, who was friends with Hiram Edson, he sits down and begins to write a number of tracts, which would have been in magazines like these, and he begins to explain, based on scripture again, what had happened and how the sanctuary had been cleansed and when it began, and that it continues. He writes this little tract called the Law of Moses, where he details his findings, and so you can see that it's not Ellen White, the one that made these discoveries. It's other people. There's a number of other people involved, and this gentleman, George Peavy, uses the book of Daniel, this is what I just mentioned, 8:14, Hebrews 9:23, and Leviticus 16 to support the position, and that is all scripturally based. So, Crozier's position, what he wrote in the Law of Moses, would become adopted by Sabbatarian Adventists. What do we call them in Sabbatarian Adventists? Yeah. They weren't Seventh-day Adventists, not quite yet. They were Adventists because they were waiting for Jesus, and they were Sabbatarian because they just discovered the Sabbath. We're going to see that. So the role of the Sabbath in the three angels' message. They discover, somebody read that for us, please. Is anyone else hot?
Yes.
Is the AC on or is it off? I mean the heater. Why did you turn it off?
I was bad about that, I guess.
Right. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of his covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a great hailstorm.
Thank you. So, the temple is open, and what do we see in the temple? The Ark of the Covenant. What else do we see? Lightning, flashes. So there's one object, right? Is that true? There's one object, and it's the Ark of the Covenant. What's in it? Is anything in it? Remember, we have that the one on earth was built according to the one in heaven. That's what we call typology, right? So the one in heaven is a representation. What's in the Ark of the Covenant? There's the Ten Commandments. What else? Aaron's rod, right? And the manna, right? So, what does that mean? You see the direction, its contents, what's in the most holy place? This is what it would look like, of course. This is like a cartoonish, if you would. But you can see that this is the holy place, and you have some of the items that are there. You can see the priest, and one time every year, the priest would actually come into the most holy place. Right? The high priest would come in here. So based on the dates, we know that it was on the Day of Atonement, the exact day that Jesus actually entered into the most holy place. That means that this curtain has now been divided, and that this priest that represents Jesus has come and is now in this place. And now Revelation 11:19 is drawing our attention, saying that the curtain is open. We know that Jesus is in there, that the Father's there, He's going to make atonement, and we know that in here there are certain items. And some of those items, we said what they were. So pointing direction towards that, we have a pot that would represent the manna, Aaron's budding rod, and the Ten Commandments. What's the significance of that? And I know we're used to iPods, but we have to go back to the time of the HX so that we can try to understand what's the significance. What does that mean? That somebody said, He can't come yet. It's impossible. What do you mean He can't come yet? We're not keeping all the commandments. We're only keeping 9. That's not enough. You understand? There's 10, and we have to keep all 10. Do you guys have any questions? Any thoughts? It is. When you start to look at it like that, it becomes very clear. It's like he just could not come. It just wasn't possible. Because we still weren't at the place that we needed to be. So, the Ten Commandments, this leads to an emphasis on the command that had been ignored. And that was 4th, right? Sabbath. So that's how Sabbatarian Adventism is born. The big push for Sabbath observance before 1844 came from a group of people that you've probably never heard of. And they're called the Seventh-day Baptists.